Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Ohio Workforce Coalition's March webinar. I am Rebecca Kushner, and I'm proud to act as the director of the coalition, and I get to support and convene and talk to all of our wonderful members and guests. Excuse me. Last month, if you joined us, you may recall that we started a series that included our leadership committee members organizing and facilitating our monthly webinars, really so that we can learn from their work and leverage the expertise that they're connected to in the field. And we are continuing that this month with one of our longest serving leadership committee members, Chari Mullen. Since Chari's been with the coalition since we were organized in 2007, and since then, the coalition really has been bringing together leaders from across the continuum of workforce development stakeholders. So education and training institutions, economic and workforce development, business and industry, labor, workers, and so on. We work to grow the prosperity of people and families across Ohio by advancing policies and practices that can improve training and supports for workers, improve the quality of jobs, and improve the equity and transparency of workforce systems. Today's session is in a Zoom webinar format, so you are muted. Please feel free to engage with us in the chat. You're welcome to enter questions in the chat, as well as respond to questions. I do encourage you to introduce yourselves. I see that we've got some new names that I don't quite recognize on our participant list today, so it would be great to hear where you're joining us from organizationally and geographically. Coalition webinars are on the fourth Thursday of each month, starting at 1 o'clock. They are recorded and they are posted on the coalition's website at ohioworkforcecoalition.org. You can find previous webinars there and links to other resources. If you've got an idea for a webinar, please reach out to me, share it, let us know, and we will do our best to accommodate. Finally, please consider tweeting us or engaging with us on Twitter at ohioworkforcecoalition.org and sharing the coalition work with your networks. So again, I'm excited to have Chari talking today here today to introduce our guests. I'm also excited for this panel because it represents really another dimension of workforce conversations that have been very prominent lately, and that is the role of small business and how we can, as a workforce system, engage with small business design solutions to support an equitable recovery. So really important for us to continue to spread the word in this space. And with that, I will hand it over to Chari.
Thank you, Rebecca, and good afternoon, everyone. As a longstanding member and partner of the Local Initiative Support Corporation, better known as LISC, I am, along with the Ohio Workforce Coalition, pleased to bring you this Equitable Pathways to Small Business Recovery informational webinar. At this time, I'd like to introduce to you Patricia Voltolini. I knew I would mess that up, Patricia. I apologize. She is a senior research associate with LISC. Patricia is a researcher and with expertise in local economic development and commercial and neighborhood revitalization. Her current work involves evaluating LISC impact in communities across the country, developing innovative research that explores and highlights topics of emerging importance in the field, and assisting data and research needs of LISC local offices and their national programs. She holds a PhD in Planning and Public Policy from Rutgers University and is a visiting assistant professor in the Graduate Center of Planning and Environment at the Pratt Institute. I'd also like to introduce Daniel Sanchez, Mayor of the City of Fremont. Mayor Sanchez is the youngest mayor elected to the city's history. He was first elected at the age of 32, and he currently is the only male Latino mayor in Ohio. In 2019, he was reelected to his second term as mayor. Mayor Sanchez graduated from Tiffin University and previously served as the Chief Probationary Officer for the City of Fremont. That was when I was fortunate enough to meet the mayor. He has also previously been a regional probation officer trainer for the Supreme Court of Ohio and was a graduate from the Ohio Peace Officers Training Academy. At this time, I will turn it over to Patricia, and she will then introduce and have Mayor Sanchez speak, who will also, both of them, introduce their respective colleagues throughout the presentation. Patricia?
Thank you, Chari. It's so exciting to be here. Good afternoon, everyone. Next slide, please. I would like to start by providing a bit of background for this study. The publication for this playbook is the result of a large team effort and a 1.5 year long research project to develop an ambitious yet practical playbook for equitable small business recovery. Our goal was to have a playbook that is tailored to government audiences in different kinds of economic, regional, and geographic contexts, and that centers the needs of entrepreneurs and workers of color and those who historically have had disadvantaged access to economic opportunities. Through this process, we engaged cohorts of nearly 50 practitioners, including Chari, who was one of them, from diverse backgrounds and who represented a variety of perspectives on equitable recovery, such as public officials, ethnic chambers of commerce, advocacy groups, community-based organizations, small business service providers, workforce development organizations, and community development financial institutions. Cohorts met multiple times throughout the year to inform and advise the selection of strategies for the playbook and to share their experiences around potential opportunities and challenges regarding their implementation. In Ohio, we had the participation of the Great Lakes Community Action Partnership, City of Fremont, ECDI, Assets Toledo, and LISC Toledo, many of whom are here today and will speak shortly about their equity and inclusion efforts. We are grateful for the generous support from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation for this important project and for the partnership with Next City for its publication. Next slide, please. So to set a little bit of background and context, right? COVID-19 has had a devastating impact on small businesses, and particularly those owned by Black, Indigenous, and people of color, or BIPOC. In the first months of the pandemic, the number of active Black-owned businesses fell by 41%, and the number of Latinx-owned businesses fell by 32%, or approximately 1.5 to 2 times the overall closure rate. The pandemic has laid bare not only the greater challenges that BIPOC-owned enterprises face, but also the profound differences in how they have been supported by federal policies and local actions. For example, it is well documented that BIPOC firms are more likely to be denied loans, receive less financing than requested, and pay higher interest rates than white-owned firms. Also, in the early rounds of the Paycheck Protection Program, only about 1 in 10 Black-owned and Latinx-owned businesses that applied received the level of assistance they requested, and 41% were not awarded any funding at all. And so because business owned by people of color are more likely than other firms to hire employees of color, their struggles affect also the communities of color they support and their employees. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. No, one before. Yes, sorry. And so to close opportunity gaps exacerbated by the pandemic, the playbook makes the case that the needs of small businesses as well as workers must be addressed, right? And so from an equity standpoint, workers from historically marginalized communities were the populations most affected by COVID. Many of these workers are also small business owners. The boundaries between the two is not so clear cut. For example, the overwhelming majority of small businesses in the United States, or 81%, are non-employer firms. For 60% of non-employers, their businesses is not their main source of income. They have other occupations. Also, small businesses are still a major source of employment. Between 2000 and 2019, they created 10.5 million jobs compared to 5.6 million for large employers. In addition, research suggests that small businesses can contribute to better work opportunities for workers who have been most denied employment opportunities, such as individuals with disabilities, the formerly incarcerated, immigrants, seniors, and parents returning to the workforce. And so helping emerging entrepreneurs and small business achieve stability is by itself a powerful job generating strategy. And so in this context, many local governments are eager to promote a more equitable recovery among small business and workers, but they cannot act alone, right? Recovery is driven by a number of factors beyond their direct control. And so for that reason, the playbook adopts an all-hands approach. It highlights actions and strategies that local governments can take in partnerships with multiple sectors and the activities that each sector may pursue independently. Next slide, please. And so reflecting on these needs, right, in our cohort discussions, the playbook describes strategies for local action around three topics critical to small business success: access to capital, small business and workforce capacity, and affordable commercial space. I won't describe each of these in detail, and I encourage those who want to learn more about specific strategies to check our online publication in the link at the bottom of the page. But to provide a quick overview, for access to capital, cohort participants emphasized strategies for local government to act as a lender through new investment vehicles, encourage private investment by providing loan guarantees, and provide business opportunities to women entrepreneurs of color through prioritized procurement strategies. Underlying the access to capital strategies is the acknowledgement of the need to rethink risk assessments and traditional underwriting requirements to consider small business assets, growth opportunities, and their connection and benefits to local communities. In the small business and workforce capacity section, cohort participants noted opportunities to further connect business-focused capacity building and workforce efforts. That is, to simultaneously strengthen small businesses and connect them to local skills and employment systems. These strategies include tailoring economic incentives for hiring quality jobs in ways that are really attractive and adequate to small business needs, addressing digital inclusion through digital skills training for businesses in a way that, again, that's accessible and responsive, and having local governments serve directly as workforce intermediaries. All these strategies are illustrated through case studies and an implementation guide to support the adoption and adaptation to different contexts. For example, the tailoring economic incentives for small businesses to advance quality living wage jobs features the City of Boston's partnership with High Road Kitchens and One Fair Wage, two organizations dedicated to fair wages and working conditions in restaurants. The first iteration of the program, called a High Road Kitchens Restaurant Relief Fund, supported 38 restaurants retaining or rehiring employees and committing to providing $20 minimum wage by 2026. The program prioritized family-owned, immigrant-owned, and BIPOC-owned small and local restaurants with fewer than 25 employees. Some participants emphasized some key aspects of the success of this program. One of them they mentioned is that to build sustainability beyond the life of the pilot, right, that they dedicated, the program engaged the state's Workforce Development Board to work with the restaurants to support their operations and staffing costs and needs, while participating small business received training on equitable employment practices. In addition, to ensure that employees benefit from the program beyond the employment, Boston's Office of Economic Opportunity and Inclusion, the agency managing the program, is collaborating with local community colleges and the Mayor's Office of Workforce Development to offer participating employees free tuition for an associate degree or an occupational skills training program. And finally, related to commercial space affordability, cohorts noted great need for policies and programs, including commercial rent relief efforts, support for commercial real estate acquisition by community serving small businesses and nonprofit mission-based partners. Next slide, please. The playbook strategies are framed by a series of 5 mutually reinforcing principles that we call equitable pathways to recovery, and that we encourage them, we would like them that to be used to support equitable program development and implementation more broadly, not just related to small business, but broader, including workforce development. The first is about the need for intentionality, right? Being intentional and defining small business focus and their needs. Practitioners and public officials from around the country emphasize that initiatives designed for a typical small business or worker, in fact, tend to exclude a large segment of the BIPOC community. Being intentional means acknowledging that generic programs or strategies will likely not reach business or workers that face the greatest needs. It requires identifying which of them are struggling the most, assessing their needs, and crafting program designed to meet those specific needs. The next principle is about being inclusive in strategy development and implementation. Cohort members felt that government often develops small business programs without involving communities or groups these programs are meant to serve. They noted that the best way to identify specific needs and craft responsive solutions is to engage BIPOC entrepreneurs, workers, and the organizations working most closely with them from the early design stage. The next principle is about ensuring program accessibility. Program accessibility challenges was a common theme across cohorts. And so as part of the stakeholder process, participants stressed the need for local governments to identify the historic and contemporary barriers that prevent local small businesses and workers from accessing funds or services. And this can range from mistrust of local governments or training providers, lack of information or resources necessary to apply, among many others. They also noted the value of offering stipends to participants in workforce development, education, and entrepreneur training to help offset participation costs for participants ranging from transportation, childcare, missed work, among others. Principle 4 is about leveling the playing field by accounting for capacity needs and deployment. Public officials and community practitioners noted that providing the support needed to overcome deep-seated inequities takes more time and resources than small business programs often anticipate. For example, assisting entrepreneurs without financial records in applying for small loans and grants requires a level of individualized technical assistance that is often not fully covered by many small business programs. Similarly, they noted the importance of investing in the staff who administer small business programs and workforce development initiatives. They emphasize how these individuals not only need industry-specific knowledge, but also must be effective trainers, coaches, and liaisons with local businesses. This is especially true for street-level workforce development staff who have challenging work of understanding the needs and lived experiences of workers while building relationship with employers. And so acknowledging and compensating for this important work is necessary to ensure equity. And finally, the last principle is about setting up monitoring process with accountability mechanisms. In the views of cohort participants, too many government programs and strategies intended to support BIPOC-owned small business and workers fail to do so. Equitable recovery strategies requires intentionality in identifying who accesses opportunities and in establishing mechanisms for program correction when needed. At the same time, important to note that reporting requirements should not become a huge burden and a barrier to program adoption. So they suggest the co-design of these measures or selection from a menu of possible reporting metrics that may give providers flexibility while also promoting accountability and progress. Next slide, please. And so finally, to foster an equitable recovery, a community needs inclusive policies both, right, at the local and federal level. The Playbook acknowledges the historic investments and flexibility afforded to local governments by the CARES Act and the American Rescue Plan Act as an opportunity to transform local businesses and workforce ecosystems in more equitable directions. Among these, they noted the following: the use of the Community Development Block Grant Program from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development in innovative and equitable ways, and provide a number of examples that are shared in the Playbook. And finally, they noticed the importance of using relief funds to invest in the supply and quality of local child care as a way to support critical infrastructure for workers and families, while at the same time generating wealth building opportunities for operators who are typically women. And with that, I would like to invite Mayor Sanchez and Chari to share their presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the opportunity to be on this afternoon here. My name is Mayor Danny Sanchez. I'm the mayor of Fremont. I just want to talk to you in general about advancing equitable partnerships for inclusion in the city of Fremont. So as stated earlier, I've been in the office here for nearly 6 years. In 2020, 29 Ohio cities and counties declared racism a public health crisis. When that happened, and throughout this pandemic, my administration really wanted to take a look at what we could do to try to address some of the issues and provide support services to minority businesses in the city of Fremont. The city of Fremont's population is around 16 to 17,000 people. The one thing that I can express to everyone here that's tuned in with us today is this starts with relationships. I can't stress this enough. It's relationships. What I know and what we all know is community engagement increases with community prosperity. So the more we can be engaged as leaders, the more prosperity we can have in a community. Throughout my years, I've established very close working relationships with our Terra State Community College, our partners there, Fremont City Schools, John Detweiler, our superintendent there, and our Mental Health and Recovery Services Board that serves 4 counties, Sandusky, Seneca, Wyandotte, and Ottawa. In early 2020, after meeting with the leaders of our educational institutions and the other organizations, what I found out was that we all had the same barriers. We were all facing the same challenges as leaders amongst our organizations, just in different ways. What I also did is I went out into the community and I had community roundtable meetings. So during the hours of what I describe as the business hours from 8 to 4, I would meet with my community partners and find out what was going on internally amongst the organizations in which we live here. And then in the evening, I would have public roundtable meetings and just invite members from the community, the entire community, whether it was the minority community, the Caucasian community, just the community. It was a mixed group of people. And by being able to find out what the need was in the community and by meeting with our community partners, I literally sat down with the 3 entities that I mentioned, and I said, I think the city of Fremont needs a diversity and inclusion director. We need someone who can represent the marginalized population in our community, from our veteran-owned businesses to our female-owned businesses, to our Black-owned businesses, to our Latino-owned businesses. Who do we have that are on working with those folks? There's a specific situation that really led me to this, and I'll just touch base with you a little bit about what that was. There was a small business that had received an RLF revolving loan fund from the city of Fremont, and they owed the city of Fremont, a fairly large amount of money on a revolving loan fund, loan that they had to start their business in previous years. And this business was on the verge of collapse. It was a minority-owned business. And talking about access to capital and small business and workforce capacity and commercial space affordability, some of those strategies that we just talked about, we really had a person in that situation. And with Chari Mullen, who is the Diversity and Inclusion Director's assistant, and by getting her out to work with these small businesses, we were able to think outside the box and partner this minority business owner with another small business owner that was able to help him do some work to be able to keep his business going. With Chari's assistance, she was able to help the city think outside the box to grant him extensions on his payments and do everything that we could to make sure that he was able to have residual income coming in to keep his lights on so his doors wouldn't close, and even gave him a forbearance on his revolving loan fund that prevented him from closing his doors. Without having a diversity and inclusion director, and by not having those relationships with Terra State Community College, Fremont City Schools, and the Mental Health and Recovery Services Board, that small business would not be in existence today. That small business is serving the youth community. There's a skating rink there, and they're thriving. The business is doing well. They're serving the community, and in so many more ways that they were even before, because of the relationships that they were able to develop through their relationship with the diversity and inclusion officer inside the city of Fremont, where only 16 to 17,000 people live. Even in a small community like Fremont, to me, it was important that we had a D&I director to provide that support to our small businesses. The way that we split that cost up is the city of Fremont, the Fremont City Schools provides 25% of the pay. Terra State Community College provides 25% of the pay, and the Mental Health Recovery Services Board also provides a percentage of that pay. And Chari ultimately works under the leadership of my administration with the city of Fremont. And with those three entities, that has allowed Chari to not only serve those entities, but the small businesses and every other business in our community in so many different ways. If you have a larger community, you just need to figure out who those community partners can be. You have to think outside the box. If we can do this in Fremont, Ohio, then you can do this in your county or in your community in which you live. But it starts with being able to justify the reason why. And that's why I'm here today, is because if I could share some success that the city of Fremont has had with some of you folks today, and be a phone call away to be a resource or an ally to help you in any way, shape, or form, from my role as the mayor of Fremont, I want to be a phone call or an email away. So my information will be shared with you. If there's anything that I can do here from the city of Fremont, I'm always willing to do what I can to help another community, help another small business. And if we can save or assist or work with one business at a time, then that's what my goal here in the city of Fremont is. I want to introduce Chari Mullen. Chari's been with the city, as I stated, since September of 2021. Chari has worked with Fremont City Schools, Terra State Community College, and a mental health board, ironically, in other roles prior to me bringing her on to my administration. So it was actually a very smooth transition because of what I said is the most important side to all of this is establishing those relationships. So in order to meet the need of the community, you have to know what the need is, and you will only get the need by doing the, I'm going to call it the, putting the boots to the ground and the grassroots to get out and find out what those needs are. I'll tell you, it wasn't easy. There were a lot of challenges. There were a lot of pushbacks with politics and all of those things. I'm a Republican mayor here, serving in a county that is, or in a city that's very bipartisan. So it definitely was challenging. But I think with collaboration and relationships and being transparent and working together with everyone, that's what's led to some of the success that I'm happy to brag about here in the city of Fremont. So Chari, take it from here.
Thank you, Mayor Sanchez. Thank you, everyone that's joined the call today. I just want to piggyback off of where Mayor Sanchez was at. If you can advance the slide one more. We had to be intentional with our partnerships. Mayor Sanchez is a big component of partnerships and relationship building. So when I joined the administration, I made sure that I was intentional as well. So we started advancing equitable partnerships for inclusion in Fremont. First, again, the community need. I'm going to tap on that a little bit. We wanted to get our data, quantitative and qualitative data, to help drive where we were going with the community need. Again, the population, the minority population in Fremont had increased. We looked at the census data to determine who was all here. And we realized through the school data, we had 43% students in minority. We had 73% were economically disadvantaged in the school system. Terra State Community College had increased 10%, and overall in our county or the greater Fremont, our minority population was towards 30%. So we realized that there was a need for this population to receive support, and we wanted to be intentional about our efforts so that these particular groups didn't feel that they were invisible. We moved into community town halls. I met with a group of minority business leaders. I believe we had 20 individuals, and we wanted to hear what their perception was about the city of Fremont and the support they needed. So we came in with 4 questions. What does the city currently do well in terms of diversity and inclusion by making them inclusive with their business? What can the city be better at? What needs to be eliminated? And general questions and concerns. From there, we were able to hear the community concern and the support that was needed. We also, again, what Mayor Sanchez championed, we knew racism had been declared a public health crisis, and we looked at Governor DeWine's impact on COVID-19. So with all that, we began to work with our partners to implement a process so we can create equitable opportunities for our business of color. What we began to do is make sure that we had access to educational and skill trades. The importance of the partnership with Terra Community College. Our community college is a workforce development center. So we began to make sure that our strategies to reach into those communities of color, that we were being not only with equality, but we were being equitable. That sometimes we had to go the extra mile or craft our services differently to reach into those particular communities. Our workforce development and talent attraction, we developed that through the Sandusky County Economic Development Corporation. And we're looking at how can we even attract our workforce to come into our community. Again, we began addressing social deterrence and removing workforce barriers. The biggest component that we are proud of right now is we are offering education and training. During this creating the equitable opportunities, we connected with MBAC, the Minority Business Assistance Center, located in Northwest Ohio in Toledo. I went and worked with them with Dr. Chandra Gore, who's the PI of the grant, and we were able to develop a partnership to have someone here once a week at Terra Community College. So we can remove that barrier of individuals having to drive to Toledo or be online, and utilizing the services that they have. They do the one-to-one personal coaching. We're helping businesses get certified, whether you're MBE or veteran-owned businesses. We're helping businesses secure capital. We are working with the local Huntington Bank on their LIFT program because we are addressing those needs of minorities needing support with their credit score to be able to obtain capital. We are helping individuals also with the support they may need if it's just accounting support or marketing support. And that's one thing I do give kudos to the mayor when we're being intentional and thinking outside of the box. The mayor will always support minority-owned businesses. We're all businesses, but minority-owned businesses, to give them that extra spotlight out in the community to get community members aware that they exist and what their services are. So moving from there, with our outcomes and bringing in MBAC and hosting forums and educational training, we're moving into implementing the 7 pillars of inclusive strategy. And how did we get to those pillars? A, we listened. Now we're strategizing, and now we're creating access. And through that, Mayor Sanchez has been championing what we call the communities of excellence. We again went back to our partners in the community so we can have a greater installation of this great work to help with equitable processes. And through that, we're going to implement the pillars of access. That is, how do we get information to individuals and how do they get there? Because we know that is a barrier, just getting the information out and enhancing our grassroots efforts. We're looking at the pillar of attitude, being intentional. What is our attitudes and different companies' attitudes towards helping this particular population? The pillar of choices. What choices are we offering that actually work towards that company so they can be successful? The pillar of partnerships, which we've been championing at throughout this entire presentation. Who will we work with? And we're also looking at our larger organizations requesting to connect with minority-owned businesses. That gives them the extra footing, that gives them the extra it helps legitimize them in the community as well. We look at the pillar of communication. How do we communicate our products and services to the minority population as well? How do we help the minority population communicate their programs and services so that they have residents that visit them or patrons? We're looking at the pillar of policy. What are the policies that we have in place that might prevent barriers, whether it is access to capital, helping credit scores? Do we have barriers with individuals trying to get licensing, become vendors? So we're looking at all that in its totality. And the last but not least, the pillar 7, opportunities. What opportunities are we creating? As Mayor Sanchez mentioned before, with the company that we help, Mayor Sanchez, through his leadership, helped create a lot of opportunities for that business owner to connect. And now he is insulated and sustaining in our community and becoming one of our youth hubs. So at this time, that's all I have to say. And wrapping up, I'm a big fan of being intentional in partnerships, and always when you're doing this great work of advancing equality in our minority communities, make sure that we are creating opportunities where their children and their grandchildren will have an opportunity to work, play, and live. Thank you.
Patricia, thank you on behalf of the City of Fremont, for everyone that is on today. I just want to reiterate, here in the City of Fremont, we're always willing to help, to share whatever information we have or the things that we're doing to try to help anyone else in their community. So hopefully you can share that information. And Chari's got me excited again here today. We just left a really big meeting, and we're going to have another big announcement here. We talked about the communities of excellence, and we're just getting ready to enter that phase. And that's going to be a 3-year process. And we're on the verge to hopefully be the first city in the state of Ohio to take on the Community of Excellence Challenge. So I don't know about you all, but here in the City of Fremont, good is never good enough. So we're going to keep it moving. So Patricia, thank you for allowing us to be on here today.
Thank you, Chari. Thank you, Mayor Sanchez. And now we would like to ask Sarah Allan, Program Officer for LISC Toledo, to give her presentation about their efforts in the city.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So thank you all for including us today. We appreciate the opportunity. I have the pleasure of co-presenting with Ms. Olivia Holden, and we're going to provide an overview of recent efforts in Toledo to build a more equitable small business ecosystem. So as Patricia mentioned, I am with the LISC Toledo program, and I lead our economic development activities. That's everything from technical assistance and grant investments to business development organizations. I'll probably call them BDOs going forward. That's just brief, more succinct. So providing those kind of investments to BDOs, as well as I am the underwriter for our small business, commercial, and mixed use lending. I'll turn it over to Ms. Olivia to tell us a little bit more about herself and Assets Toledo.
Hi, my name is Olivia Holden, and I'm the executive director of a little organization, nonprofit called Assets Toledo. First, let me do some backtracking. Mayor Sanchez, I congratulate you. You have encouraged me today. And so I thank you for that. And I'll probably call you. So remember the name, Olivia Holden, Assets Toledo. So to tell you what we do here in Toledo, Ohio, we've been in existence since 1999. We're an entrepreneurial training program. We offer training 3 times a year, 13 weeks. We meet on Tuesdays and Thursdays from 7 to 9. But more importantly, and we started off with just identifying low to mod minority persons, but we've expanded. During this time frame, we've had over 3,900 people who've gone through our program, with 86% who have gone in business, but more importantly, they stayed in business. And so what we do is we meet the needs of those persons who have a dream that's realistic, even if they aren't, but so that they can find out what it is and how it is, when it is, and so forth, to start their own business. We become a family. We don't just send you through our program and say, we're going out, send you out to the turnip patch. You are a family for life, and I don't divorce anybody. Might put them in timeout, but don't divorce them. So we are just excited to be, I am excited along with Sarah, and we work together. When the mayor said about collaboration, we truly have a collaboration with LISC. Sarah has been my mentor. She's actually, when I grow up, I want to be like her in her role. So that's what we do here. We take them from A to Z. And after they get done with the 13 weeks, they have a business plan. And then we follow up with technical assistance. So that's what we do at Assets.
And they're amazing at it. Miss Olivia has, like she said, they do become a family. She provides not just, a training course or some technical assistance. I mean, she is there for folks in ways, that fall outside of the technical, 9-to-5 job. And so to get back on track, Ms. Olivia made me blush a little bit. LISC Toledo has been investing in the small business ecosystem for over 10 years as part of our comprehensive community development strategy to build strong and vibrant communities, specifically by building wealth among communities of color and low and moderate income families. Our investments come in the form of loans and grants and capacity building assistance. In 2019, LISC Toledo began making grants to Jumpstart, which is the backbone operator of the Toledo Business Growth Collaborative, or BGC, as you see on the slide. Jumpstart is a nonprofit headquartered in Cleveland, and they opened an office in Toledo. Specifically, one of the main reasons was to launch this BGC, this Business Growth Collaborative. And what that is a collaboration of 13 business development organizations, including LISC and Assets, that are focused on creating a more inclusive small business ecosystem through improved and streamlined access for underserved businesses. So the intention is that there is no wrong door, and that relationships are key, as multiple folks here have highlighted, to connecting small businesses to new partners. In practice, what this looks like, so the BGC meets monthly, and we say this usually, we bring this up a lot, is we put this entrepreneur at the center of the room to wrap services around them. LISC's investments to small businesses really ballooned during the pandemic for potentially obvious reasons, but we launched over the course of 2020 and 2021 some relief grants to small businesses. Those, we were fundraising, both national and we were as a local office from local sources, both private and public, like CDBG. And those grants were focused on businesses most vulnerable to the effects of the pandemic, including those owned by women, BIPOC individuals, LMI individuals, and veterans. And we saw this as an opportunity to connect our grantees with technical assistance. Many of our grantees were disconnected from the small business ecosystem. So BGC members, including Assets, met with many of these grantees to support their stabilization and growth when possible. So I'd like Ms. Olivia to chime in on her part in that process.
I apologize. Sometimes the technology gets away from Olivia. What we do and our partnerships, I am a member of the BCG Jumpstart. And so what we do is we partner with people so that they will be able to take the businesses to the next level, so that they will have an opportunity to actually meet with people, be with people who can give them a mentorship ability, to be able to say, this is where you need to be. And they take that very seriously. Not only the small businesses, but the mentors themselves. Sarah, you're gonna have to pull me back on track, and because I didn't. Yeah, no worries. So just if you could comment about some of the needs that you were seeing during the pandemic as you were meeting with folks. Okay. What happened was that because of small businesses, their funding was less than stellar, and it became almost to zero. That was a big thing. If they had staff, they didn't have it anymore. All of a sudden, they were on their way up the hill and didn't get stuck in midway downward. They went to the bottom. So a lot of them were saying, well, I'm going to go out of business. That was a big thing. The financial part of it, lost their rental space, no employees. So they were back at ground zero, and the need to try to regroup. What they needed was someone, and that's where their mentorship came in. They needed someone to say, okay, if you do this, maybe this will occur. So those meetings, the meetings that they had with other people was invaluable. Not only the encouragement, but they needed step by step. This is what you can do and how you can do. The city and LISC put together a funding that was just unbelievable, because that was the key right there for them to stay in business. For businesses who had 10 employees, then they had 2, themselves and their spouses or their children. And how do you work through that? What are some of the options? But the biggest options that I saw was that they didn't have financing. That was one of the biggest. And so helping them, and LISC stepped up to the plate. They and the City of Toledo did as well. And to make people realize, well, you've got to know what's your niche and how are you going to attract it, and remain in business. That was some of the biggest areas that I saw, the barriers. And I can safely say that there were people who said, I'm closing up my doors. And with somebody and financing, it worked. It worked.
Thank you. So the grant funds and some of the other low cost capital that folks were tapping, some of those federal sources like PPP loans, I mean, those certainly did help to stabilize businesses, keep them afloat, and maintain them through, especially the time when the stay-at-home mandate was in place. But because these were new resources, it was also an opportunity to connect them to a lot of the business development organizations that could, continue to coach and counsel these businesses, mentor them to prepare in the future for downtime and, to grow. So just to briefly touch on, the impact of the grants, this was over $825,000 went out in grants of up to $10,000. 92 Toledo area businesses received grants, and 85% identified as Black, Latinx, or a person of color. 67% were women, and 68% of businesses were located in LMI communities. So again, it was an intentional grant fund to support these different populations. You can kind of see the top 3 industries that received grants. And I just wanted to briefly mention that the majority of these were micro enterprises with 5 or fewer employees, most of whom I would say the owner was the sole employee. So while they may not have had a large workforce, these were businesses for whom this was a secondary or maybe even tertiary source of income for the owner. So they were fully or part-time employed elsewhere. So they were not only entrepreneurs, but they were a part of the workforce. Slide, please. So that first year of the pandemic really increased LISC's work in the small business space. And we heard from partners like Assets that they were seeing more clients than ever, and especially among communities of color. It was always true that many of the businesses that these business development organizations support are not only entrepreneurs, but they're workers as well, as Patricia had highlighted earlier. And these organizations are often connected with entrepreneurs for the very reason that they want to grow their business in order to be able to leave another job and, add staff and, and be a place of job development. But many obstacles, as Ms. Olivia said, like access to capital, stand in their way. And many businesses during that time were launching as a means to supplement or replace income lost as the economy contracted during the pandemic. So at the time, LISC Toledo thought it was important to take stock of the needs of small businesses. So we launched a survey to determine how to move forward. And we had a 55% response rate, and we felt pretty good about that. And what we saw was the highest need was for, no surprise to us, financing, as well as, a need for more revenue for operations, again, connected to capital. And close behind that was business planning. And the resources they were interested in using was one-on-one counseling for financing or financial planning or repairing credit, as well as business planning. And interestingly, and sadly, 62% had said they had never applied for a small business loan, and they cited reasons mostly related to credit worthiness, or fear of not being credit worthy, as well as just not having enough information about the about lending or loan products available to them. So I wanted to provide Ms. Olivia another moment. I know we're running close on time, to just mention any needs that she was seeing, increased needs.
What we found were people had lost their jobs. They were sitting at home. And during this time frame, they had a lot of time to think. And so this is where we came in and Zoomed our classes. But we saw people who really decided, I'm not going back into a workforce anymore. I'm going to open my business. So that one-to-one coaching along the way of what you do, how you do, when you do it. Credit, let me tell you, we had people who didn't have credit scores, truly a 1.0 credit score. And because of someone doing a one-to-one with them. And it also, and I'm a firm believer in this, it gave people the incentive that you can live after COVID. And but you got to take the first, second, and third steps. So financing, the coaching, the credit scores, bringing that up, realizing that they can go to a financial institution. And I won't belabor anything, but they made it. We have to be able, all of us on this call who work with individuals, we have to be able to say, you might be in a rut, but you can leap over the rut. There is no rut big enough that you can't go through it, around it, or over it. So that's my 2-bit seminar there.
Thank you. So all of this, slide, please. So all of this, all of the information we were collecting, all of the stories we were hearing in the summer of 2021, we had this new opportunity. The SBA released a new RFP for the Community Navigator program. It was a pilot. LISC applied for and was awarded the highest level of funding, and Toledo was one of the markets included in the grant, along with 5 other markets. The Navigator's goal, the Community Navigator's goal, is to provide direct support and access to relief and growth resources, including access to capital, with a focus really on underserved and specifically BIPOC businesses. Another element is to really build and strengthen the small business ecosystem locally at local levels, and to provide the greatest level of service to small business clients. So this is a hub and spoke model. LISC is acting as the hub and grantee to deliver training opportunities and technical assistance and capacity building opportunities to the spokes, the organizations that are sort of our sub-grantees. We'll also be doing some ecosystem mapping to understand the strengths and opportunities of the system so that we can innovate products and programs that fill gaps in services and capital resources for underserved entrepreneurs. And then lastly, we are collectively tracking the impact of the work. So we're working with you can see all of our spokes down there, Assets Toledo being one of them. And our spokes were really selected with the knowledge that we had gained in the last few years. that, these folks were providing that one-on-one TA for business planning or for financing or financial coaching. It was also incredibly important that our partners had relationships in BIPOC communities already, if we're trying to expand access. And then we also had a focus on daycare. We've got Assets Toledo, who is going to be working with a national consultant to build out a daycare specific training program. And one of our other folks has a great deal of expertise in small business because, as we know, it's great to support. I mean, it's helpful to support the small business in and of itself, but by supporting those small businesses, it supports the larger workforce system, those working parents and guardians. So I know, Miss Olivia, if you wanted maybe to give one last second before we close out and turn it back over, I wanted to give you a moment to do so.
As all of you have realized, a second won't do it, but I congratulate you all on the work that you're doing, because small businesses, whether you know it or not, and I think you do, they turn into big businesses, and they are most certainly an adjunct to keeping the community growing and funding and focusing. So you can reach me at Assets Toledo as well as Sarah with LISC. There's much work to be done, but we can do it. I believe we can. We're doing it with LISC and Sarah. They've made more of a believer for me than I've ever been, but the need is still there. And don't give up on that person that walks through your door that they don't like they can't do nothing. Trust me, they're the ones who will be making $250,000 in a week or two or 10 days.
Thank you. I agree. I think the don't give up is a really important theme, and it's an inspiration to hear about your work. We aren't going to have too much time for questions. In fact, we have 2 minutes. So I want to just make a couple points, and then if it's okay with you, we will take questions and aggregate them and share them with you all. And if there's, either individuals could reach out or we can post them with the recording. I think it was really important to get through the entire presentation. So that's why I apologize. But, one of the things that I want to make a point of is that the intersection of workforce and small business support is a really important one, and an increasingly important one post-COVID. So that is a conversation that I think a lot of folks maybe aren't quite having yet, and where the connections between the two have not been as clearly articulated. And we're all trying to help our communities. And I think these conversations that demonstrate how you can make connections and bridge some of the gaps are incredibly important, particularly as we think about post-COVID demonstrations of equity across the workforce, where we see disparate impacts and so on. And so I applaud you for pushing the envelope on some of this, each of you, in the way that you're doing your work, and certainly look forward to learning more from you. Again, I have a litany of questions, but this does take us to 2:00. And so we will circulate those questions, and I am looking forward to talking more to each of you. I am grateful of your time. This will be posted on our YouTube channel, which gets exposure in a variety of ways. So we'll keep you posted on what comes from that. And again, thank you very, very much.